Hey, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 4. I've been having all these ideas of what to speak about, and I've been writing them all down. So I have plenty to share. I remember when I was a kid, I had things that I wanted to tell people, but I asked myself, who would listen? Well, I'm older, and there's people listening now. So I have so much to share now. um, The first time you ever experience something is when you find it most beautiful. The more you are exposed to that thing, the more dull it becomes. Our eyes begin to deceive us, even if the very first time that you saw it, it brought awe to your eyes. Whether you were born in a certain situation or you have created the life that you now live in, that is your reality. You begin to think that the whole world works like this, which is not true, by the way. But um, there's a lot of things that I see as normal, and only because I live like this. One of those things is everybody has their own car. Um, Another one is going to college is going to help you get a job. Um, Having a job is going to take care of your debts and your responsibilities. But people go through other things around the world, and you wouldn't know that unless you traveled and you were exposed to these things. Traveling makes you step out of your comfort zone. You're going to go into a whole new environment with different people. Maybe you don't even speak the language. It becomes hard to communicate, and some of the things that you have as habits here may not be applicable there. So you have to be willing to change or to be malleable in that moment. And traveling isn't easy. Traveling takes effort. This last year we had the great opportunity to travel to Japan, and it took a lot of work. It was, I think, 6 or 8 months of preparation for that. Some people had to get their passport, and some people had to get a birth certificate and get the birth certificate notarized, and then be able to find out, how do we get a passport? Where do we go? Where do we pay? And then how long do we have to wait? Some of the wait time was like 2 weeks. Another one was a month. So, it's a whole process. And finding a place to stay, finding things to do while you're there, and making sure that you're able to get from the airport to the house that you're going to be at. Like, it's a ton of work. And I think as a kid, you always talk about it like, oh, wouldn't it be great to travel to Japan? Oh, all the food would be awesome, and there's gonna be like anime everywhere, and oh, it'd be great. But you talk to those same people, and they've grown much older, and they never make the effort to do it because for so long they've lived this life in a bubble that has become their reality. And they've never decided to step out of that comfort zone, or they've put themselves in a place where they can't do that, where they have to delay it for some time. And what I mean is when responsibilities that are much bigger than yourself, such as kids, when they come earlier in life, you can't see traveling until later in life. But I had the great opportunity, the time, the money to be able to go at this time in my life. And Japan was a culture shock. It definitely was a shock for me. Everybody used public transportation. Nobody had their own cars. And there wasn't even enough space for parking spots that if you did rent a car or something, where would you park it? it was more of a hassle to have a car than to just use the train and learn the train system. And at first, it was a little bit intimidating, yes, that we had to learn, okay, you get on this train, you have to get off at this stop, hop on a different train, and then get off at this stop, and then we had to walk, 10, which turned into 25 minutes because we couldn't find the exact place that we were staying at. And we even got to this place where it looked like it. The doors to the building looked like it. And, we looked at our phones and it's like, okay, that's okay. The doors look like that, but we can't find the key. Where's the key? The keys, they said it was in the mailbox. And all of a sudden, you're lost in a whole nother country. But luckily we were able to find the place. It wasn't that same building that we were at. It was actually another like 10 to 15 minute walk. But luckily we were able to find it on GPS and just start walking towards it, look up at signs, and we were able to find the place. But we got used to it. We got used to the public transportation. We got used to walking around regularly. We walked so much. I counted it on my Fitbit, and it came out to be, I think it was 12 miles a day, 12 miles of walking. And that's a lot. Like, a lot of us here in the US are not used to that type of walking. We didn't really think about it being 12 miles, but on my application, that's what it said. And in Japan, it's normal for them to walk like that. It's an everyday thing for them to walk like that. I even would like look up and, feel the breeze or the sun or even the rain. It rained on us one of the days. And I was like, man, I just feel so alive. I feel way more alive out here than, being in a car all the time, having to drive everywhere, not even look up at the sun, right? But here, being in another country, I was able to experience that. And these people see that as normal. One other thing that I noticed was they don't have a lot of public trash cans. You have to walk into a store to find a trash can. There isn't trash cans everywhere. But really interesting that even though they didn't have all these public trash cans, people would just carry their trash. They wouldn't throw it on the ground and litter everywhere. So that's pretty interesting because over here, you could see out in the streets, especially, if you're going downtown or even by a freeway, people just throw their trash out everywhere, not really thinking about another person, not being considerate, but just thinking about themselves and, okay, I just want to get rid of this in the moment. But there, I noticed that people are a lot more considerate. It is a collective idea. And what I mean by collective is that there's multiple people that have this same idea, that it doesn't need to even be talked about. It's just what they believe and what they follow. Another thing was that when we were on the escalators, I remember that everybody, and you just kind of realize this over time, was that everybody stood on the right side. They stood on the right side and they grabbed the handrail and it would take them up. If there was anybody who needed to go past them quickly, they would just go onto the left side and walk up. And so you didn't have to tell somebody, hey, excuse me. You could just go on the left side. And you didn't have to speak the language. You could just go because you knew that no matter where you were in Japan, they would all use the escalator in that way. Something that I noticed about myself while I was out there, and I'm a loud person, okay? What's even worse is when I'm around my brothers, like I just went out to go eat with my brothers earlier today, and I remembered this, that whenever we're together, we just hype each other up. One will say something, the other one will joke, and the other one gets louder and louder, and we just have a good time. But this is the dynamic that we have as brothers, and I think as Americans, that's something that a lot of people do without thinking, is like, you just do whatever you want, this is a free country, you just do whatever and don't think about the consequences. But in Japan, um, when you're on the train, which a lot of people use the train, everybody was quiet there. And they're quiet so that they're not interrupting another person. And, I would go into the train and I'm already like loud, and I would pop out my phone, do a snap, from Snapchat, and I was the only one talking. Or I would see my friends and say, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna calm down and be a little quieter. Sorry." But it was just interesting. It's interesting how they lived in that way, and how nobody had to teach them that. They've just become that. Um, it makes you think. It makes you feel different, and it makes you consider, like, what would it be like if I was like that? It doesn't mean you have to be like that all the time, but now that you're experiencing something new, something different, um, it challenges your ideas and your habits that you've had for so long. The way of life out there is very fast paced. We were able to stop by a place called Shibuya Crossing, and at Shibuya Crossing, all we did was we just wanted to go check it out. Some people filmed, and we just like walked through. And as tourists, we're just there to experience it. But I'm pretty sure that those people who are crossing there, Shibuya Crossing is like this street that has a ton of connecting streets, and when it allows people to walk, there is just crowds of people that fill the streets, and then they cross over to the section that they need to go to. But I'm pretty sure that those people were not there just to cross and to see Shibuya Crossing, but they had somewhere to be. So, these people are constantly working, constantly doing something. Um, they are hard workers in school. And I even remember seeing one day that we were about to get on the train, and there was a guy who just could not stay up. He had to like lay down and fall asleep as he waited for the train. And the only thing that could come to my mind that would make me understand the moment is because he's exhausted of doing so many things. Um, they're very productive people. I'm sure because they work so hard, their standards are much higher. And because of this, like, we had the opportunity to see so many things that were aesthetically pleasing. One being the fashion out there. If you see places like Shibuya or Harajuku, the fashion out there is on a different level. They use a lot of different colors. They use things to accentuate the way they look, and to provide a unique form of style that even me being there, and I'm not really into clothes. Like, I'm into my own physical body and just whatever makes it look good. But even me seeing those things, it's like, wow, this is really good looking stuff. Like, uh, very detailed. And of course, you see the people wearing the clothes, and especially the Harajuku people, they are overdone, but it looks good. You're like, wow, you put in so much work to look that certain way, and it is their way of expressing themselves. In such a fast pace and productive, life, they need something in order to uh, give and express, who they are as individuals. Another thing is, their hair, their advertising. They had anime everywhere, and me growing up, I love anime. So I'm so happy that, like, they have a similar idea or thought to put this up, because they know that it would attract views, it would attract attention to it, and it would make people want to go there. It was, advertisements for shops, but also for shows, events, just so much. And I think maybe because we were in Akihabara, which is the anime capital there, that it was everywhere. Um, but it was so beautiful to see everything and so overstimulating because um, everywhere you looked, you're just like, wow, this all looks good. And even the food, I remember the food, there was some things that looked better than they tasted. I, of course, enjoyed the food. I am not a very picky eater, but some things like desserts, I ate so much desserts out there. Some of the desserts, I was like, wow, that just looks so good. What is it? And it's like, okay, it's a crepe with cream and fruits, but it looks like an ice cream cone with ice cream and some fruit on it. Not to say that the crepe and cream was bad, but you take a bite, you're like, oh, it's not what I expected, but it's good. And they had to think of that. They had to think of putting something together like that that would make you want to then buy that. Um, and it was everywhere. And there was so much of it. Like, it surprises me that there is so many people who can each make their own unique thing. That's why I find it so beautiful when somebody decides to be themselves and to give what they have, because you see something different. It's always a little bit different, a little bit of a different detail, and it adds to the multitude of things that you're exposed to. So, because I was able to travel to another country, I was exposed to the possibilities of things that I'm not used to here. When you are able to see that there is different possibilities to what you're used to, then it makes you want to do more. It makes you want to try something new. And there is also a collective idea that if somebody has done something, that you could recreate that. It becomes easy. It becomes possible to you. So traveling opens that up to you. It opens your mind to now new things, where before you had to be this certain way and you had to live in this certain reality, that now there's more possibilities. There's more ways of doing things differently. And when you're doing these things, you could still live a productive, a fulfilling, a happy life. And it doesn't have to do with you doing the same things that you did before. It brings life back to the dull world that you were seeing. Travel. Do it while you're young. You shouldn't have the thought that you have to be old to have gone through so many experiences. I'm young. I'm only 25, but I feel like I've done so much with my life. Traveling will open you up to a better perspective in life. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.